Imagine a civilization thriving thousands of years before the Great Pyramids of Egypt were even thought of. Picture a people who built cities bigger than any seen before, spreading out across the rich, flatlands of Eastern Europe. This isn't make-believe. This is the world of the Cucuteni-Trypilla culture, one of history's most amazing and mysterious societies. For over 2,000 years, they grew and lived well, creating a world full of art, new ideas, and secrets. And yet, for hundreds of years, their story was hidden, lost under the ground of modern-day Ukraine, Romania, and Moldova. Their existence makes us rethink everything we thought we knew about when civilization started in Europe. It's like a puzzle that historians and archaeologists are still putting together today. This lost world existed between about 5400 and 2750 BC, which is honestly a super long time. To give you an idea, their culture was already old by the time Stonehenge was being built. Their land was huge, covering over 350,000 square kilometers from the Carpathian Mountains to the Dnieper River. This wasn't a small hidden group. It was a huge network of communities that made the biggest cultural mark in early European history. They were trailblazers, pushing the limits of what was possible in their time. Their story starts not with kings and fighters, but with farmers and artists who made a society unlike any other, leaving behind clues that hint at a very different way of life. The first clues of their existence showed up in the late 1800s. In the village of Cucuteni in Romania, and later near Trypillia in Ukraine, strange, beautifully decorated pottery pieces started to appear. Farmers' plows would dig up fancy ceramic bits and odd clay figures, things left behind by a forgotten people. At first, no one understood how important they were. Who were these ancient artists? How could they have made such fancy things so long ago? It was the start of a great archaeological detective story, one that would slowly show how big and complex this amazing lost civilization was. The more we dig, the more we realize how much of their story is still unknown. What we have found is simply amazing. These weren't simple hunter-gatherers living in messy huts. They were master builders and town planners. They were brilliant artists whose pottery is thought to be some of the best from the ancient world. They were a people who, it seems, lived in relative peace for hundreds of years, putting their energy into community, spiritual beliefs, and creating things rather than fighting. But their most puzzling legacy is what they left behind in fire. Every 60 to 80 years, they would purposely burn their own settlements to the ground before building them again, often right on top of the ashes. Why? This intentional act of destruction and new beginnings is one of the biggest mysteries they left behind. The story of the Cucuteni-Trypilla people can be seen through 3 different stages, each showing amazing growth and change. It all started small, in the early period around 5400 BC. Small, spread-out villages began to show up across the land. These early settlements were simple, with just a few houses, maybe 10 or so, often set up in an oval or circle shape. The people living there were early farmers, learning to work the rich black soil of the area. They lived in simple one-room homes, but even then, their unique culture was starting to form, hinted at by the first decorated pottery they made. These were the beginning years, the quiet start of something special. Then came the middle period, a time of huge growth and new ideas that began around 4800 BC. The small villages started to change. Settlements grew bigger, more organized, and had more people. We see the start of 2-story houses, an amazing building achievement for that time. These weren't just simple shelters. They were complex buildings with straw roofs, clay walls, and even decorated insides. The population grew fast, and with it, the size of their towns. This was their best time, a period of confidence and getting bigger. It was during this time that they perfected their amazing pottery skills and set up the huge trade networks that connected their communities. This growth reached its peak in the late period, from about 3500 BC onwards. The settlements reached a size that was unheard of anywhere in the world. These weren't just towns. They were like early cities, or megasites. Some of these huge settlements, like Talyanki in modern Ukraine, covered an area of up to 450 hectares and may have been home to over 15,000 people. To put this in perspective, these were the biggest groups of people on Earth at the time, even before the cities of Mesopotamia and Egypt. They were carefully planned, with circles of houses, meeting buildings, and defensive ditches, all pointing to a very organized and cooperative society. The way these megasites were built is amazing. The houses were built in neat circling rows, creating a feeling of shared order and space. In the middle, there was often a large open area or a bigger building, which might have been a temple or a community hall. This layout suggests a society built on shared values and working together, rather than a top-down leader. But the most surprising thing remains the burn cycle. Imagine living in a busy city only to know that your grandchildren would one day set it all on fire. This ritual wasn't an act of war or a disaster. It was a planned, deliberate event, a basic part of their way of seeing the world that remains very mysterious. What was it like to live inside one of these busy early towns? The evidence suggests a life deeply connected to the land and the community. Farming was the base of their society. They grew different kinds of wheat, barley, peas, and beans, using simple tools like deer antler hoes to work the rich soil. They also raised cattle, pigs, and sheep, which gave them meat, milk, and wool. Life revolved around the farming calendar, planting, taking care of crops, and harvesting. These weren't just chores, they were community activities that brought people together, making sure the whole settlement survived and did well. Everyone had a part to play in feeding the community. Things found by archaeologists paint a picture of a society where women had important and respected roles. While men likely handled the heavier farm work and herding animals, women were in charge of the home and were key craftspeople. They were responsible for grinding grain, making food, and raising children. Very importantly, they were also the ones who created the culture's most lasting legacy, its pottery. Also, signs of weaving looms in almost every house suggest that women were also skilled at making cloth, turning flax and wool into clothes and other fabrics. The sheer number of female statues found suggests that the idea of the feminine was not just respected, but honored. One of the most amazing things about the Cucuteni-Trypillia culture is how little evidence there is for fighting. For over 1,000 years during their best time, we find very few weapons, no big forts built for long battles, and almost no skeletons with signs of violent death. This is very different from many other ancient societies. It seems they created a world mostly without war, a peaceful way of living that allowed them to focus on art, building, and community. While some later settlements had ditches, these might have been more for marking borders or controlling floods than for defense. Theirs was a society seemingly built on working together, not fighting. This peaceful nature is also seen in how they handled their dead, or rather, the lack of it. Unlike the Egyptians with their fancy tombs or other European cultures with their big burial mounds, the Cucuteni-Trypillia people left very few graves behind. We have found huge cities of the living, but very few cities of the dead. This is another big mystery. Where did they put their dead? Some ideas suggest they might have left bodies out in the open to decay or burned them, with the ashes scattered or mixed into the clay of their homes. This clear lack of concern for individual burials suggests their focus was on the endless cycle of the community rather than what one person left behind. To truly understand the heart of the Cucuteni-Trypillia people, you must look at their pottery. It's more than just useful. It's like a canvas for their beliefs about the universe, an amazing display of their artistic talent. The pottery they made is honestly among the most beautiful and technically advanced of the entire early world. Using just 3 colors, red, black, and white, they painted these detailed flowing designs onto their pots, bowls, and storage jars before baking them. And these weren't just simple geometric shapes. They were complex, swirling patterns, wavy lines, and symbolic shapes that seemed to move with energy and meaning. Each piece is a unique work of art, showing the skill and vision of the person who made it. The designs are captivating and deeply meaningful. Spirals, circles, and flowing S-shapes are common on their pottery. These are often thought to represent the natural world, the sun, the moon, the winding rivers, or the changing seasons. Some experts see the patterns as pictures of snakes or water, both powerful symbols of life, fertility, and new beginnings in many ancient cultures. The designs are never still. They're always in motion, creating a feeling of rhythm and endless cycles. It's as if they were painting the very forces of the universe onto their everyday objects, putting their beliefs into the very fabric of their daily lives. Along with these magnificent pots, archaeologists have found thousands of ceramic figures, and most of them are female. These are not simple dolls. They are styled representations of the female body, often with big hips and bottoms, showing their connection to fertility and childbirth. Some are sitting, as if on a throne, suggesting power and authority. Others are decorated with the same swirling patterns found on the pottery, directly linking the female body to the cosmic symbols of nature and creation. These figures were found everywhere, in houses, in trash pits, and in special shrine-like areas, suggesting they were a key part of daily rituals and beliefs. So, what was the purpose of these objects? The fancy pottery was likely used in ceremonies and rituals, maybe for serving special meals or making offerings to their gods. They were honestly too delicate and fancy for everyday cooking. The female figures are often thought to represent a mother goddess or earth mother, a divine being who controlled fertility, farming, and the cycle of life and death. They might have been used as idols in home shrines, as charms to ensure a good harvest, or as help during childbirth. Whatever their exact use, they tell us that the idea of the feminine was central to the Cucuteni-Trypilla way of seeing the world, a powerful force to be celebrated and worshipped. The spiritual world of the Cucuteni-Trypilla people seems to have been ruled by a powerful life-giving deity, the Great Mother Goddess. While we don't have written text to prove this, the huge amount of evidence from their art really points toward a Mother Goddess worship. The thousands of female figures, the celebration of fertility symbols, and the repeating nature of their art all suggest a belief system centered on a supreme female creator. This goddess likely represented the earth itself, the source of all food, life, and nourishment. She was the divine mother who oversaw birth, growth, death, and rebirth, a cycle mirrored in their farming and even in the burning and rebuilding of their towns. Within their sprawling settlements, archaeologists have found buildings that seem to be temples or public shrines. These were often bigger than the surrounding houses and located in a central spot. Inside these sacred places, we find signs of ritual activities. Altars made of clay, sometimes decorated with the horns of bulls, another strong symbol of fertility and strength, have been discovered. Piles of carefully made pottery and groups of female figures are often found here, suggesting these were places for offerings and worship. It was here that the community would gather to perform the rituals they believed would ensure the continued kindness of the Great Mother and the success of their world. The house itself was also a sacred place. Each home had its own fireplace and often a small clay altar. Figures were often placed near these altars or even built into the walls and floors of the house. This suggests that spirituality was not separate from daily life. It was woven into the very fabric of their existence. Every act, from baking bread to weaving cloth, could be seen as a small ritual, a way of honoring the divine forces that governed their world. The home was a small version of the universe, and the family was a reflection of the divine creative power, with women as the central figures in this home spiritual practice. The ritual burning of their settlements can also be understood through this spiritual viewpoint. This act of destroying homes was not an end, but a change. By sending their homes and belongings to the flames, they may have been symbolically returning the materials to the Earth Mother, completing a cycle. The fire would have hardened the clay walls, preserving the structures and everything inside as a permanent offering. Rebuilding on the same spot, on the ashes of the old town, was an act of renewal, a powerful statement of continuation and rebirth. This dramatic ritual may have been the ultimate expression of their belief in the endless cycle of life, death, and new beginnings. After more than 2,000 years of amazing cultural growth, around 2750 BC, the world of the Cucuteni-Trypillia people ended. The lively megasites were left empty. The making of their famous, detailed pottery stopped. The entire culture seemed to just disappear from history. The vanishing of such a huge and successful civilization is honestly one of the great unsolved mysteries of early European history. There wasn't one big, terrible event, but rather a slow decline and scattering. For decades, experts have argued about the cause, and the answer likely comes from a mix of powerful forces that overwhelmed this once thriving society. One of the main ideas points to a big change in the weather. Around the 3,000 years BC, the climate in Europe became much colder and drier. This would have had a terrible effect on their farming system, which was perfectly suited to the wetter, warmer conditions of the time before. Many droughts could have led to crop failures, hunger, and a breakdown of their food supply. The huge populations of the megacites would have been impossible to feed. The stress on resources may have broken the social unity that had kept their peaceful society together for so long, forcing them to split into smaller, more mobile groups. Another strong reason is the arrival of new people from the east. Around the same time, groups of wandering herders, often called the Yamnaya culture, began moving west from the Pontic-Caspian steppe. These newcomers brought a completely different way of life. They rode horses, drove wagons, and were herders with a more mobile, male-dominated, and warlike culture. They also brought new tools, including bronze weapons. While there is little proof of widespread violent takeover, the arrival of these groups would have put huge pressure on the land and resources, disrupting the settled farming world of the Cucuteni-Trypilla people and slowly pushing them out or absorbing them. Even though their culture vanished, what they left behind didn't completely disappear. Their DNA lives on in the people of modern Ukraine and the areas around it. They also passed on their knowledge of farming and pottery to the cultures that came after them. But perhaps their most important legacy is the challenge they present to our usual view of history. They show us that civilization doesn't have to mean kings, armies, and empires. They built some of the world's first cities, made amazing art, and kept a large peaceful society for hundreds of years. They are a powerful reminder that there are other ways to be human, other ways to organize a society. And fun fact, the polishing technique they used to make their pottery so smooth was so good that some pots can still hold water today, 6,000 years later. They were, in a very real sense, Europe's first great civilization, a lost world that is finally being found again.